Hello, everybody. We're just going to get started in a minute, so just hang tight. While we wait to get started, if folks want to just drop in the chat where you're dialing in from, that would be great. All right. Thanks for dropping in where you're from. All right, it is 1 o'clock Eastern, so we'll get started. Thank you all for joining. It's great to have you here. My name is Vince Hahn. I'm the CEO of Mobile Coach, and welcome to today's webinar. This is a little bit of a different type of webinar for us. It's really where it's a webinar where I'm going to explain this resource that we've created for you. And so hopefully you'll find it useful. This year, I have had a fair amount of people ask me ask me the question, how do I create a business case to bring in a chatbot to help support one of our learning programs and initiatives? And so we've had resources here and there to help people that are trying to make a case for it. And so we decided to put it all together into one business case template. And so that's what we'll be showcasing today. And of course, this is a resource that all of you are free to utilize. And so after the webinar today, you'll get a recording to this webinar, and also you'll get a link to download the template of what you'll see today. I'd like this to be interactive. Everyone has sort of different context, different situations, and so please feel free to pop in a question or a suggestion, anything like that in the chat. Just a note, the way that Zoom defaults the chat is that it will default to just sending your question to the host and panelists. You're welcome to send just a private message to me. I'll do my best to watch, but most often questions are useful for everybody. So if you could just change your setting to everyone, then everyone can see your question. I have two colleagues on the line, Corey Richards and Paul Bills, and they'll be helping me answer any questions that I don't see or can't get to in the chat. So with that, let's get started. I think that was all the housekeeping I was supposed to cover. So we'll get started here. So this business case template is a huge slide presentation, and I think we're going to get it to you in PowerPoint. I'm showing you a Google Slides right now, but either way it will work. And it's divided into 4 sections. And the goal of the template is that you can pick and choose the assets that are going to be helpful for you and your stakeholders. So I'm going to walk you through each section. The first section I call show, and my experience is that when you've got an idea for a chatbot to support one of your initiatives, a lot of times, people, it's a little bit of work to help people capture your vision, your same vision. And so, what's the cliche? A picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a demo is worth 5,000 words if that's the case. And so it's always great to show somebody what you mean when you're saying, hey, I want to bring this type of chatbot to support this program. It's actually not as hard as you might think it is. So I've got a whole section on how to do that. And then there's a section on benefits. And so you do have to be able to articulate the value proposition. Why is this good for the organization? Why is this good for learners? Why is this good for your learning and development team to have a chatbot? And so we've got a whole section on benefits. And again, you can pick and choose which of the benefits will resonate most for your organization. And then probably the most frequently requested sort of topic is data. Like, can you show me some KPI information, key performance indicators? Are there return on investment indicators? How can I measure success as you make a business case? And so we have a whole section on data and how to frame the data and which data to choose from that we'll share today. And then finally, what are some common objections that you are likely to receive, and how do you address them? So those are the 4 sections we're going to go through. And so let's dig in. So with the first section is called show. Well, okay. First of all, if you're, I'll be a little presumptuous. If you are trying to build a business case for not only a chatbot, but to have Mobile Coach power that chatbot, which of course we would be thrilled with, this template has 1 slide about our company. So it describes our company, and there's a whole other set of collateral if you need it just about Mobile Coach. That we can share. So this business case template is mainly about the 4 things I talked about, but we do have this 1 slide that talks about who we are. So pretty self-explanatory slide. So let's dig into the first section, show. And so when I mean show, you can get away with showing screenshots and images and examples. But with the Mobile Coach platform, it's actually pretty easy to create something interactive, and it can be a little proof of concept or a little light bulb type of demo. Many of you may have had a Mobile Coach powered chatbot demo. If you go to mobilecoach.com/demo, and I'll actually ask Corey to put that into the chat, there's like 25 demos in there that you could choose from. But essentially, these are some common use case buckets that we find learning and development folks using our platform to build chatbots. And so you can find these categories on that mobilecoach.com/demo site. The other thing too is that to show, you'll want to sort of pick the chatbot channel where you envision your target users interacting with. So let me tell you a little bit more what I mean about that. And so on this slide on the right-hand side, this is a sampling of some of the most common channels that we support here at Mobile Coach. But let's say that you've got a training reinforcement use case that you want to make a business case for. So if I go to this next slide, here's a training reinforcement demo. And there are 3 different modalities for this demo. You can try it via SMS. You can try it in Microsoft Teams. You can try it as a web widget. And so what I mean by picking the channel, you want to like preemptively, get ahead of any potential objections that you might find internally. So if you know that like your IT security team's not going to approve of SMS, but you think that they will approve of Microsoft Teams because that's adopted across your enterprise, then show them the Microsoft Teams link. If you think that your organization, because it's a worldwide organization, will want to support multiple channels, you can set up a demo across multiple channels and then demonstrate that for your team. And so sort of a 2-step process where, going back to this slide, choose your use case and then you choose the channel where you want to demonstrate it. So in this business case template, I think there's, there's like probably 8 or 9 different use case demos. These are all out of the box generic demos. If you've never tried a demo, here's one for coaching support. Let me actually ask, so there's an acronym chatbot demo. If you haven't tried this one, I'll actually park here and let you try one. Corey put this information in the chat so it's easier for you. So if you want to try it through SMS, you can just text hi to the 626 number. If you want to try it via web widget, there's the link, and then a Teams, a Microsoft Teams. I have to be specific about that because some of you might be using WebEx Teams. They have the same name, but this is a Microsoft Teams link. So give this a try if you haven't tried it before. This is kind of a fun user experience. So I want to talk a little bit about this whole section. So when you get this template and you have all these different use cases, feel free. These demos are always on. So whether you share them today or share them a year from now, they'll work. And there's no limit on how many users on each of these things. And so this is a resource for you that's out of the box and ready to go today. That said, you might take a look at this gamification content as you're playing around with it and say, all right, this particular use case, this particular demo, asks generic trivia questions like, about it asks you about like hurricanes and like Richter scale and stuff like that. And so you might think, hey, that's fun, and I get the idea of how gamification works, but it would be better if I replaced the question about Richter scale with something specific to my organization. So if you think that is going to be more effective for you to show what you mean to stakeholders, then there's a couple ways to do that. First of all, we at Mobile Coach offer these free 1-hour workshops you can sign up for, and you get a sandbox account. Most of these demos are in our script library, so you can import it into your Mobile Coach account and just edit the content. And so you can totally customize it to the content that you want it to be. Alternatively, you can reach out to me. I'm always happy to accommodate creating custom proof of concepts or demos for people, in part because it's helpful for us. Of course, it's self-serving, but also our platform's so agile that it's really easy to do. I recently had an experience where we created a demo for a client or for a contact, and I think they were feeling a little worried that they were obligating themselves to making some sort of purchase decision because we're creating this demo for them. And really, that wasn't the case at all. It's just really easy for us to do, and it's fun to show off how easy it is to create a pretty cool demo using our platform. So again, there's a bunch of examples here. I've been scrolling through them. These are out of the box demos. Feel free to use them. If you want to customize them, you can either do it yourself or reach out to us. There's another example of an acronym use case, and this with some pretty this is a pretty regular example, because a lot of people we run into have a lot of acronyms and they've already got an existing list of acronyms. And for us, it's really easy. We can just import that list of acronyms into an instance, and now you've got like a customized acronym chatbot. So this one's a really easy one to do. So anyway, not to belabor the point, but it's really important to show. And sometimes showing people and letting people interact with the chatbot is going to be 90% of your business case, because then they'll see it and the benefits just are so obvious once they start interacting with the chatbot. All right, so that's section one, show. The section two is to talk about the value proposition and what are the benefits of a chatbot. So I'm going to highlight 8 sort of buckets of benefits. Some of these might resonate with your stakeholders more than others, and so you don't have to use all of these. Again, the intent of this template is for you to pick and choose the ones that fit your organization. So let's talk a little bit about these. And this section, as well as the objections section, might lend themselves more to questions. And so again, feel free to pop in questions. I should also mention with this template, we have some stock images in here. You're welcome to have license to just take the content and put it into a different document if you want. Again, this is a resource intended just to be helpful to you. So a key benefit to a chatbot, and some of these might be like totally obvious, but I have experienced that you still have to say them, especially to stakeholders who might be new to the idea of chatbots, or maybe their thought of chatbot is more. So a lot of people have actually had a negative personal experience with chatbots, where you go to some website and a chat window opens up and they're either annoying because they're trying to sell you something, or you try to ask it a question and it can't answer the question. And so, but they're web-based experiences. And so a lot of people have that in their mind. So when you bring up, hey, I want to bring a chatbot to help support this learning audience, they might already come into it with a little bit of a negative feeling. That's why it's really important to show them what you mean. Like, oh no, this is a different type of chatbot experience, but then be very deliberate in articulating the value. Here are the benefits that we're going to see. So the first one here is frictionless. Chatbots can be placed on channels where people already are. So you don't have to go download some software. You don't have to go to a different website. You don't have to create a username and password. It's just, you can't underscore that enough. The more clicks you're going to save people, just the more engagement you're going to have. So, oftentimes when people tell me how their chatbots are adding value, they just say, well, we used to try to email people and no one would ever open our emails, or, it's just so hard to reach people after they got out of a training setting. And a chatbot really solves that problem. The second piece of what's frictionless is the user experience is actually a lot more frictionless because it's just a conversational user interface. That's a little bit of a technical term, but it just means messaging. So messaging is just easier for people. I don't have to navigate through a complicated, UI. Frictionless just is positively correlated to more learner engagement. Low cost. So when you compare, if you think about putting a chatbot like on Microsoft Teams, you're not having to build software. There's no complex installation or maintenance program that you have to do. So a lot of times with software implementations, there's a lot of hidden costs around, testing and implementation, getting IT to integrate stuff and getting single sign-on put together and all of these things. And it can often take a long time to integrate and test, and then things break, if links go down and things like that. And so generally speaking, chatbots are sometimes, exponentially less expensive than traditional software. That's a big benefit. A lot of organizations care about things not being too expensive. And this next one's a very obvious benefit, right? Where it's automated conversations. And so a chatbot never goes to sleep. It can have thousands of conversations at the same time. It can interact during any time zone, especially if you're a worldwide organization with a single L&D department that's supporting a global workforce. That can be tough. And so a chatbot can help you scale your resources that way. And of course, chatbots can be programmed to speak in multiple languages. And so, great benefits to scalability. Highly flexible. So chatbots can be programmed to deliver personalized messages to each user. So of course, you can just create a chatbot experience that is a canned experience for everybody. But as if any of you that might be familiar with the Mobile Coach platform knows that it's very dynamic. And so you can create adaptive learning paths. You can create variables where it calls me by name or knows my job function or knows what course I've taken. And so then the messaging can be very specific to my context. And so that's really great flexibility. And again, flexibility when compared to traditional software, that's a lot harder to do. And it's really easy to A/B test. And so what I mean by that is, you can A/B testing. So my background's in software, and everybody knows that if you can A/B test, that's the path to really figuring out the best, configuration of whatever software you're trying to build. But A/B testing is oftentimes just unrealistic to do. But with the chatbot, it's really easy to do. So, imagine creating a track where you're sending messages to part of your audience in the afternoon, and another audience is getting messages in the morning, and just compare response rates and engagement rates. Really easy to do, and it doesn't take long before you can create a list of best practices, of messaging best practices that fit your audience. Because you don't need to deploy different software. It's just sort of scheduling different sets of messages. So the flexibility of a chatbot's a huge benefit. And so doesn't take many iterations before you're really optimizing your business case for your chatbot. User appeal. Users prefer the convenience and the instant response of chatbots. I don't have to go wade through difficult search engines. I can just interact with it. And because it's chatting, you can insert the element of fun. We've seen this a lot, where you can give your chatbot a name. It kind of takes on a life of its own. And And so there's like a sort of a cutting edge, technical hey, our company's really cool. We have this great chatbot, so there's that qualitative benefit too, in terms of user appeal. And again, there's no need to wait for a human to respond to me. There's just it's really convenient to get instant answers. And, today, especially the rising generation that have grown up, with Google from the moment they could read, there's just an expectation that why do I need to wait even 1 second for an answer to a question that I have? So a chatbot enables you to deliver that instant response. And so depending, at the beginning of this resource, there was a list of all the different channels that we support, like Microsoft Teams and SMS and WhatsApp and Google Chat and Zoom. And most of those platforms make it really easy to plug in a chatbot. And so their IT integration ease is really compelling. And so a lot of times you'll have a great idea to implement some software, and then you'll get some resistance because IT will say, we're overbooked. We're booked out for a year. We don't have resources to dedicate to implementing your software. So a value is, well, hey, to integrate a chatbot into your Microsoft Teams instance is like a 5-minute activity. They make it really easy to do. So that's a huge value. And then, this one, you may not appeal to everyone in your organization, but a lot of times to key strategic stakeholders, data mining is going to be a really important value. And so you can learn a lot about your learner population from the type of data that the chatbot's going to get. Where do people get stuck? What are they searching for? What do people think? You can use the chatbot as a really great assessment or survey tool. And you can really get some pretty rich data from users as a survey tool, because you're not sending them a link to a Survey Monkey. It's in the chatbot experience. And so you can ask them questions throughout the year, and then the type of data that you're going to get, I think, can be really, really interesting and really rich. So then this next one, a chatbot can have both push and pull modalities. That's like a term taken from marketing speak. But like if you're rolling out like an app or a software or a website, even you're really sort of a pull modality, because you're waiting for the learner to find it and engage with it. With an app, you can send some push notifications, but a lot of people, turn off their push notifications, or a push notification appears and disappears, and so it's hard to find. So it's really not effective as a push modality. But with a chatbot, it is pretty effective, because essentially the user experience is just as if a colleague was sending you a message. So you can program the chatbot to push important reminders and messages and learning activities, as well as program it to pull or to respond to a learner's inquiry. So both of these modalities in combination can be a really great value. So those are the different benefits, value proposition. Again, you can pick and choose from those and put them into your business case. All right, so let's move on to the next section here, key performance indicators. If I get a little bit too in the weeds on this section, someone just stop me. But let's talk about there's a few different sections within this section. The first is, because there's different types of data that you can point to, and again, pick and choose the ones that are going to resonate with your stakeholders and your stakeholders are going to care about. So first of all, just overall engagement statistics. There's some SMS statistics here. There's a Microsoft Teams statistic here. The idea that a conversational user interface is more frictionless, and so it's just going to you're going to get greater engagement statistics. I have more specific chatbot engagement statistics and some case studies I'm going to show you here in a minute. I want to show you this little model I have for a return on investment formula. So I get asked a lot in conjunction with a business case, like, what's the ROI going to be? Well, here's how to compute the ROI for a chatbot user experience. It's a 4-step process. I'm going to describe these, and I'm going to show you two examples. So you define your success metric. then you have to create a data collection plan against that success metric. Then you have to somehow compute the cost of the program, and not just the cost of the chatbot, but the cost of the initiative that you have. And then finally, here you're going to create your business case for the ROI. So let me show you an example of what this is like. So let's say that you've got a leadership workshop and you want to bring in a chatbot. And so you want to measure, all right, what's the ROI for us to bring in this chatbot to support this leadership workshop? Well, step one is to define your success metric. So in this use case, let's say you want to improve the score of a target behavior within that leadership workshop by 10%. And the target behavior could be, things like, how regularly am I having one-on-ones with my direct reports? How regularly am I providing active listening feedback to the people that I'm leading? So you need to choose your target behavior. So you choose a key metric, and then you need to have a baseline assessment. So the identifying data collection plan here is that in this particular use case is that I'm going to have a baseline assessment pre-course, and then 90 days after the course, I'm going to do a post-assessment. So the design here is there's a leadership workshop. I'm going to have a chatbot, have a training reinforcement experience for 90 days. So I'm going to measure at the beginning and then measure at the end. And then computing the program cost. The third step here, improve the target behavior. Improving the target behavior costs X dollars per participant. And so you have to figure out the cost of the workshop, figure out the cost of the chatbot 90-day experience so that you have total costs. And then in terms of the business case, the statement here is that senior management has declared that this target behavior can impact the bottom line by X%. So this workshop will buy that for Y dollars per participant. So, hopefully I'll show you another example here too, but you have to, these are all sort of, templated stuff because I don't know your particular use case. I'm happy to be a thought partner with you if you want to put something like this together and you're not quite sure how. Just let me know, but let's run through a different example. So let's say that you want to have a chatbot supporting new hire onboarding. And so this user experience might be a new hire starts, they get a chatbot to be their concierge for the first 30, 60 days, or however you might want to do that. So define your success metric. You want to reduce early employee turnover by 8%. This is actually a big deal in a lot of service-based industries right now. There's a lot of employee turnover. So here you want to reduce it by 8%. Identify your data collection plan. The turnover data is stored in your HRIS system. The new employee program will cost X dollars per hire, so you have to compute the cost. And then in the business case, each lost early employee costs the organization X thousands of dollars. If the new employee onboarding program will reduce turnover by 7%, then overall savings will be Z dollars. And so it's kind of that. So actually, a lot of times people ask me, hey, help me with an ROI calculation. So I'll say, okay, well, literally that's a return on investment. So you need baseline data, then you need to measure your investment and then measure the return. And when I get into it a lot with people to help them out, they realize that they don't have a lot of this underlying data. So it does take some work to do this. Actually, rarely do I see learning and development organizations have access to this data easily to be able to do a true ROI. If you do, I would absolutely recommend you doing it for any program because that will just drive good decision making. But if you don't, then you have to rely on more KPI type of data and the data that's available to make your case for your business case. So Michael asks, what would be some examples of how an onboarding chatbot would interact with a new employee? So there's actually a really great demo of this, and maybe Corey can drop in the new hire onboarding demo in the chat. But just quickly, Michael, some examples for new hires is that you could have messages that are pushed to them. So the idea is that for a new hire, typically orientation can look like where you're hooking them up to a fire hose, and it's just impossible for them to learn everything that you're giving them in the time that their managers allowed for you to have access to them. And so instead of the fire hose approach, drip that in a micro-learning strategy. So you can send them like administrative things like, hey, remember your benefits forms are due at this time. But you can also send like cultural things like, hey, here are some, here's where to eat lunch, or here's some clubs and associations we have in our company. You can share best practices. You can share like etiquette things too. Like chatbots are great to tackle sort of uncomfortable topics. So, what's the dress code? How to make sure that employees are showing up to work on time. What are the consequences if I'm late? Just really trying to get ahead of some of the yellow flags that a new employee might run into, wittingly or unwittingly, and a chatbot can be a great resource for that. Let's see. Heather asks, in line 1 you have 8%, in line 4 you have 7%. This is just an example, so probably should be the same number. That's a good point. Let me just think if there was a reason why it was a different number. It could be a different number if your strategy to reduce early employee turnover includes things other than the chatbot. But yeah, that should probably be the same number. Okay, so the next KPI is qualitative, and I wouldn't dismiss qualitative, because a lot of data people will say quantitative is the best, and the ROI calculation is purely quantitative, but qualitative drives a lot of decision making, and there's a huge benefit to qualitative data, and a lot of times this is the only thing you're going to have access to realistically. So in terms of qualitative data, you can ask people how they, what they think of the chatbot experience, and so you can put that into an NPS score, overall user satisfaction scores, and then there's just general feedback that you can collect as well. Sometimes the business case is as simple as, we are having a hard time getting learners to engage with learning content. And if that is the business case, then this type of qualitative arguments are really effective. And so you can run a proof of concept, you can show a little demo, you can ask demo participants what they think. And if you can demonstrate, hey, they like it and they're using it, then that could be like your first step of a simple business case to build upon. So I wouldn't dismiss qualitative right away. I would say it can be a really important part of your business case. Okay, so that is the qualitative piece. And then the last section of the KPIs are case studies. And case studies are really important for obvious reasons. We have a bunch of out-of-the-box case studies that we've done with some of our clients. So here's a new employee onboarding case study. I think there's a handful of them in here. I'm not going to take the time in this webinar to go through all of them, but this is a resource for you. These are captured in slides. If you need them to be a little bit more robust, we do have one-page PDFs of each of these. So here's a leadership training one. What was this, the one before? A reinforced safety training, sales enablement, customer service. And so we have these different chatbot case studies. You can also put into your business case that you're going to run your own case study. And that could be like phase one of your business case to say, hey, I'm looking for approval to create a chatbot for 100 people for this use case. You can limit the budget that way. And we're going to run a case study to drive our own KPI results or our own return on investment results. And we always love partnering with people to do case studies because, they're good for you, they're good for us. But this section here shows you a handful of case studies. You're welcome to use these, and you're also welcome to create your own. So before we go into the last section, which is common objections, I did notice a couple questions in the chat, so let me take the time now to answer those. Jennifer asks, how easy is it to get the data into the chatbot? Do you have a demo on the admin experience? So our platform, it's very easy. All the chatbot interactions between the chatbot and the users are captured in our platform and measurable and put into our reporting dashboard. So it's very easy to do. It can be a ton of data. That's sometimes the challenge, is that it's so much data. How do you sort through it? And so we've got report templates to help you slice and dice the data in different ways. And Jennifer, happy to show you the admin experience. There are two ways to do that. You can sign up for a workshop, and then you actually get a sandbox account. If you've never seen the admin panel and would like just a little view of what it looks like, then if there's time at the end of the webinar, I'll share my screen and show you what it looks like. Sherry asks, in terms of pricing, can the bot be contracted for a 3-month period? So that's going to be different for every chatbot provider. For Mobile Coach, the answer is yes. You can price it per user, per month, and that's a really great way to limit the budget if you want to try something out. And it's very common for business cases to start with a proof of concept or a pilot with a limited budget, just to get some data to build onto the business case. And so absolutely we can support that, Sherry. So let's talk a little bit about some common objections. I'm really curious if so I think there are 4 or 5 here, maybe 5 or 6, and then curious if there are some that you can think of that aren't on here. So let's go to the first one. You might have someone say, as you start to socialize this idea, oh, we already have something similar like that. We already have a chatbot somewhere. And this is often the case when you're bringing in IT because we're a technology company. So at some point you have to say, hey, IT team, we're planning on using this technology. Really common for them to say, oh, we've already got a chatbot. And so typically in the vast majority of those instances, IT has experimented with or brought in some sort of machine learning web-based chatbot that's like meant to just be FAQ bot. And they're very different because those types of chatbots, you train it with just some initial content and then you forget about it. And it's only ever used if someone happens to go to that website and ask a question. And what we've talked about today is very, very different. We describe the chatbots that we power as programmatic chatbots, meaning they're programmed to be, an engaging user experience, to have a relationship with the learner, versus an IT chatbot that's just sort of a transactional user experience, one and done type of user experience. So you can ask them, well, okay, well, does it have easy authoring and scheduling of messages? Or with the Mobile Coach platform, anyone can author. You don't have to be an IT. You don't need to be a software developer. An instructional designer can create this. Even a marketing intern can create a chatbot. And so that's a question to ask. Does it have the ability to push messages to learners on a scheduled or rules-based schedule? Does it have the ability to integrate with Microsoft Teams, with Slack, with WhatsApp? Does it have the ability to have a learner profile? Like, can you send adaptive messages where if someone's in this job function and they've had this amount of tenure and they've taken these number of courses, then let's send them this bank of messages just for them. So these are attributes of programmatic chatbots that most likely a chatbot system that IT has will not be able to do. So that's the first objection and how to handle it. The next one is, well, we don't have resources to implement anything new at this time. We hear this a lot. And that's a very reasonable objection, of course. So we all have too much to do with too few resources. Well, some things to talk about here. Mobile Coach, we can launch as a standalone system. So it doesn't take much to launch it, particularly with certain use cases. Like an example is an acronym chatbot. If you want to launch that, you can be launched in just a number of days without any IT integration at all. So very easy. So it can be standalone system. Authoring is easy, can be done by a single person. We have a script library in our platform with, I think, 65 different chatbot scripts right now. It's all of those are ready to go. So you can just go with something that's pre-existing and build on it and start easy and build on it as you go. And you can always launch with a handful of users to test it out and then use that to build your business case. And so you could say, oh, well, let's launch it with just a handful with just my team or just my department. Have it be standalone, no IT integration. start getting some of this qualitative feedback, and then use that to create a business case to have people allocate resources for a broader rollout. So these are some of the things that you can say to address that concern. Sometimes we hear executives say, well, why would anyone want to talk to a computer? Let's just have people talk to human beings. And yeah, it's a great point. But we have lots of case studies to show evidence that chatbots are extremely effective. Everything we've talked about so far, the value proposition things, the frictionless nature of them, the case studies, the data that you can get to show how a chatbot can really add value. There's tons of case studies. We're in our 9th year of business doing chatbots, and so we've seen this over and over again. And I think that perhaps qualitatively, it's important to bring out that there are use cases where people prefer to speak with a chatbot than a human. And these are buckets typically when the topics are sensitive or maybe there's some vulnerability. So I have some examples on the slide here, like I have a question about a sensitive subject. I'm going to feel more comfortable asking a computer than a human being. Or maybe there's something I don't understand, but I know I should. That's a pretty vulnerable situation. And so if I'm asking my manager repeatedly on a task that I already should know, I'm not going to do that because I don't want my manager to think that I'm not qualified to do my job. So you want to create a safe place for people to get the content and the learning they need to be successful. A chatbot can be a great resource for that. Roberta asks on the sensitive subject issue, will we see what they have asked? So the best practice is to first, when you roll out a chatbot, is to develop a privacy policy and then communicate that privacy policy to your users so that they know. So you can choose whether you're going to see the data or not. And if you decide that you are going to see the data, then you just need to let people know that. Will that impact their answers? Yeah, probably a little bit, but depending on the context and how you roll it out, I think people are going to rely on the anonymity that they feel with the chatbot and the convenience of it to ask the questions that they have. This next objection is that you might have a policy in your enterprise where you're not allowed to message people on their personal devices. So here you can choose a workplace collaboration platform like Teams or Slack, or use a web widget, put it on a desktop. If they don't have access to the desktop, then allow users to opt in. People are opting in using their personal devices to HR related things that are important to them. Maybe accessing their benefits or accessing a way to ask for time off or something like that. If the chatbot feels valuable to them to help them be more successful in their job, and certainly learning can fall under that umbrella, they'll opt in using their personal devices. And you can have all the disclaimers that you need to provide the coverage that your liability and privacy team are going to want to need when people opt into using a service on their personal device. Will people really use it? Well, again, there are plenty of use cases, case studies that demonstrate lots of engagement. So it's important to pick a case study that resonates with the idea or the use case that you're thinking about. So getting a technology vendor approved through security is almost impossible. This is an objection we find increasingly coming up as we are in an increasingly regulated world. So the good news for Mobile Coach, we have an enterprise-grade security infrastructure. We work with banks and hospitals and other enterprises that are in highly regulated industries that have very, very secure protocols. We've always been able to meet their security guidelines and requirements. You can use existing approved messaging systems to lower risks as well here. There are a lot of ways to lower the risk to help a security officer feel comfortable with implementation. You can restrict the content of messages. You can create the content to not include any sort of sensitive information. You can create your chatbot to not include any personal information either. It can just be sort of a generic training reinforcement path as well. There's always this tension between personalized messages will feel more valuable to the user, but you do have to adhere to existing policies. And so there's this tension between personalization and security. And you just have to straddle that line the best you can, given the rules and context of what what your company will allow you to do. So I believe that is the last objection. Curious if you have other objections that you anticipate people having that we haven't covered. And also if you've got any questions. So that concludes this. So all of this is the resource. This is the business case template. And again, you all have an email to have access to these slides, and feel free to adapt them to your needs. But with that, I'll take a breath here and see, are there questions that people have that I have not answered, or be happy to answer questions. Please put them in the chat. And while we wait for you to think about whether you have a question or not, I'm going to see if I can help out Jennifer and show you, if you're interested, and if you haven't seen our platform, I'll give you a short 5-minute demo of it. For those of you that have seen it already, again, you'll receive a link to the recording of the platform of this webinar, as well as a link to that resource. So feel free to say goodbye. But if you'd like to see a demo, stay tuned, because I'm going to share my screen and show you a demo. Heather asks, one concern I could see for hourly employees is that they're technically working during their off hours. That could affect wage and hours laws. Absolutely. That's kind of related to the objection of we're not allowed to interact with people on our personal devices. So some of the things we've done in those cases, again, I'll reiterate, make it opt-in, but you can also program the chatbot to integrate with your HRIS systems to know when people are on the clock. And so you're scheduling messages for when they're working. You can also, if it's opt-in, in the onboarding experience on the chatbot, say, hey, this is a purely opt-in user experience. This is a resource for you. Know that when you're interacting with this chatbot, that any local text messaging rates apply if it's on SMS, and that you're not on the clock when you're asking a question. So the other thing to do is choose a use case that's fairly benign, where it's more of a benefit versus like an obligation. And that's one thing you can do for hourly employees. So this is how our authoring platform looks and works. It is, so if those of you that have tried our training reinforcement demo, this is the demo. So you come in here and you author your message. We won't have time to go over all the features, but just to show you the programmatic nature of it, you can come in here, you can add multiple versions of the same script. So if this is like a recurring message, you can mix up the messaging so it doesn't feel so robotic. You can add emoticons, you can actually have images and little videos and links to PDF, things like that. So the message, anything that you're sending someone through a message, you can program to send. We have some columns here that help you configure the automation. I won't go through those for this particular demo. The calendaring function here allows you to calendar and schedule your message. So you can trigger it in one of 4 different ways. Day of the week, like Tuesday at 10 a.m. Day of the month could be like, the third to the last day of the month at 10 a.m. You can schedule it to like program day, day 1, day 5, day 10, day 15. You can trigger it based on calendar date, like November 18th at 2 p.m. All of your calendaring functions will resolve to the local time zone of your learner. So if you're a worldwide organization, you don't need to worry about calendaring separate rules for every time zone. That's going to happen automatically. You can also trigger messages through conditions and actions, like if someone answers a question, then trigger this next message. So there are different ways to trigger messages. It gives you a very basic sense of the authoring. There are tons of features in here under the content and settings. Just really briefly, you can upload knowledge bases. You can create API connections with other systems to trigger messages. You can create templates, a lot of different use cases. And I'll quickly just show you the script library up here. This is where I was talking about before, where we have all these different pre-made scripts that you can use and import into your mobile coach instance, do a little bit of editing and be live. So like, here's a training reinforcement chatbot, a 4-week chatbot to support a specific training, checks in 3 times a week. If you think, hey, that's like a design that we could use, you can just import it into your instance and do some little editing and be off and running. So hopefully that helps, Jennifer. That just gives you a little bit of a sense of what the platform looks like. And again, we've got workshops that you get a free sandbox account to the platform. So please sign up for that and try it out, or have someone on your team try it out. No obligation. You can start configuring stuff and seeing how it works. So other questions that people have, let's see. Jennifer asks, can reminders and other messages be scheduled? Yep, I think I just showed you that. David asks, can the bot help a trainer out by monitoring the Zoom WebEx Teams thread during a virtual ILT? So you can have a chatbot. That's a really interesting idea, David, actually. Great use case. The chatbot can be used to monitor inquiries. You can set up like what we call preconditions based on keywords or key phrases, and then trigger messages there. One thing that it's not going to do is support a group chat. It's just a problematic. Have you ever been in a group message thread where there's 10 people in a group and 2 people start having a conversation on their own? Can be pretty annoying. And so we don't support that type of functionality, but we support one-on-one monitoring. So you can imagine having in an ILT situation, having a chatbot on Teams that you can just tell your participants, hey, go ask this chatbot a question if you have one during the course of this training. It can answer questions. It can also collect questions that the chatbot may not be able to answer, but it can collect them for the instructor later on. So that could be a really nice use case. Roberta asks, for reinforcement, could I use it like an automated checklist for new hires? Absolutely, that's great. Yeah, absolutely you can. That's a great use case. And then David, I was actually going to mention, segueing to your question about post-class for certifications and things like that. You can actually imagine that same chatbot being a resource during the training, and then after the training continue to be a resource. It actually could administer your post-training assessment, and not only through like a traditional software, a survey, but imagine like drawing out the survey across like months. You might really get some more meaningful qualitative feedback about your training if it's asking you, hey, remember 2 months ago you had that training? What do you think about it now? How useful has the material been? It can be pretty useful information. And then you can program it to, if the ILT is based on some sort of certification path with due dates, and maybe there's pre-exams or things like that, you can schedule it for sure to make sure people are following those milestones. It's a great use case. Any other questions? There's some great questions, great discussion. Well, great. Again, if you have any questions that you can think of, you can email me. I'm vince@mobilecoach.com. You'll get an email either from me or from my colleague, Corey Richards, with a link to this recording plus the actual template, business case template. If you have suggestions on the template or resources that you wish were in there but aren't, please let me know. It's easy for us to build upon it. And I really appreciate everyone attending and taking some time out. Let us know how it can be helpful to you. Thanks a lot. David asks, how many use cases should you have to do a demo? Or a pilot. Well, I would for a pilot. I've found to choose one use case. I would say this about a pilot. Even though it's a pilot, you want to make sure that it's a good user experience. So a lot of times when you do a pilot, you just say, hey, let's just get something good enough out there. And with chatbots, I find that people will decide pretty quickly whether it's a good thing or not a good thing. And so for a pilot, I would recommend choosing one use case and making it a really shiny, thorough user experience. And choose one use case, choose a channel that's realistic for your organization, whether that's Teams or SMS or something like that, and roll it out just with a single use case. That's been my experience. So great. Any other questions? You can feel free to shoot an email to me. Thank you for joining, everybody. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day and the rest of the week. And we'll sign off now. Thanks, everyone.